Hello everyone, good morning or good afternoon. We're just going to do a quick recap of how to chop an onion. It's been quite a while since some of you have cooked. So first of all we need to remove the tip of the onion where the shoot came up out of the ground, like that, and then remove the root of the onion. Mrs. Halloran leaves the root on because I think it stops your eyes watering, but I like to take it off, so I'm going to take it off there. And we then need to peel the onion to remove all of the brown and tough layers. There. So keep all your peelings off of your board so that we don't confuse them with the onion once it's chopped. So to recap how to chop the onion up, we're going to use our bridge hold. So the bridge comes over the onion. So if you're right-handed, you make the bridge with your left hand. And if you're left-handed, you make the bridge with your right hand. So then we take the knife and we cut right through the onion. So we cut it in half. We put the flat side of the onion on the board to make it more stable. Put our bridge grip back over the onion and we come through in slices here, probably about 5 or 6 times depending on the size of your onion. Try and hold it together, then you can turn it round and then we can slice across this way and we end up with our onion diced up. I'm then going to do that with the other half of the onion. So to recap, 5 or 6 slices across this way, try and hold it together, turn it round, come back this way, and you end up with a beautifully diced onion, like that. So to fry your onion, a little bit of oil in your frying pan. Turn the heat on. So as the oil's warming up, I'm going to put my onion in the pan like that. So you can hear the buzz of my pan on the induction hob I'm using, but normally you wouldn't have that sound. So can you hear now the onions are beginning to sizzle in the pan? And they'll take about 5 minutes to cook through till they become translucent or opaque, and that's a sign that they're cooked and ready to move on to the next stage. I'm going to turn it down a bit now that the onions are cooking well and just leave them for 5 or 6 minutes until they look like these that I've already chopped and fried, and then we can use them for the next stage of the recipe. Okay, so we've already chopped and fried our onions. The next ingredient I'm going to use is a courgette. So I'm going to top and tail that, like that. And then I'm going to use my bridge hold again. I'm going to cut all the way through the length of the courgette. And then I'm going to do it again down each of the halves. So I get 4 sticks of courgette. And then I'm going to come across like this. So I'm dicing my courgette, but they're quite big pieces. They're going to go into a quiche. I want it to have some kind of structure to it, some texture, so I don't want them to be too small. There we are, so chop those up. So, once again, a bit of heat into the frying pan. A little bit of oil, get the courgettes in so they can heat up alongside the oil so it doesn't stick too much. Good. I'm going to leave those just to start gently frying, and then my next ingredient is this Swiss chard that I picked from my garden this afternoon. So there's not much of it. It's looking a little bit ropey at this time of year, but it's a nice fresh ingredient and it's homegrown. So I'm going to just slice that up. I'm scrunching it up this end with my fingers just to hold it together. Slicing it all the way across. And slice through the stalks as well, those can be included. Like that. I'm going to add that to the frying pan. So you can use any ingredients in quiche, anything that you've got in the fridge that you want to use up. Just turn that down a little bit so it doesn't burn. Leave that to fry. So the next ingredient I'm going to use is something called roasted peppers that actually come in a jar. They look like that. They've been roasted in the oven, so they've got a lot more flavour, intensity of flavour than the fresh peppers that you buy. It's a bit lazy really, you could roast them yourself, but they're perfect for this kind of tea when you just want to get maximum flavour in and minimum effort. So I slice them across like that. I'm going to come this way now, slice them up like that. So lovely pile of roasted peppers. They don't actually need any more cooking, so I'm just going to leave them while my Swiss chard and my courgette fry off a little bit. So while I'm frying my vegetables, I'll show you how to do the pastry. So here's the dish that I'm going to cook my quiche in. And you can either make your own pastry or you can buy it from a shop. We've used this in school before. You just need to remember to leave it out of the fridge for 20 minutes or so before you want to use it, so it unrolls properly. So you remember it comes on baking parchment. You just need to unroll it like that, all the way to the end. Gets a bit harder towards the end. Mine's cracked a little bit, but we'll be able to stick that back together in the pan. So flip it over like that and tuck it into your tin, your container. So mine's ripped across here, but that's not a problem. I'm just going to sort of double it over a little bit there and just apply some pressure, stick it back together so that when I put the egg mixture in, it doesn't leak out. And then just push it down all the way around until you've lined your tin. Seal up all the cracks. I don't think mine was out of the fridge for quite long enough. It was still a little bit hard. Now you can see along this edge, it doesn't quite come to the top of the dish that I'm using. So what I'm going to do is trim this extra piece here, which I don't need, from that edge, and then I'm just going to use that to stick along here. It's a bit like patchwork really, so I can make it come a little bit higher so that my filling doesn't leak out. There, so you can see it's fixed all the way around now. It's a little bit too big around these edges, so take some scissors or a knife, just trim it off a little bit because you don't want those edges to burn in the oven. There. Back in the bin. So there you have your base for your quiche. Now if you had time, you could blind bake that, which means putting the paper, baking parchment in the bottom, putting some baking beans in, and just baking it for 15 minutes before you add the mixture to it. So we don't have time to do that in school, but if you're baking at home you could. So here's the baking parchment that came with the puff pastry. If you screw it all up and then open it out, it makes it much softer and more malleable, so it fits in there really well, like that. Just give my courgettes and Swiss chard a stir. Get my baking beans out. Right, so these are baking beans. If you do GCSE food technology, then you will definitely use these. Sometimes we use them lower down the school. So you tip them in, spread them out, and that stops the pastry puffing up I've forgotten to dock my pastry. Mrs. Halloran would be tutting at this moment. So, it's all a bit of an experiment today. So I'm just going to use my fork to make a few holes in the pastry. That's called docking the pastry, and it stops it puffing up when you cook it. Pop my baking beans back in so Mrs. Halloran doesn't tell me off. There. Now I'm going to put that in the oven for 15 minutes. My oven's just behind me here, you can't actually see it. Okay, so while I'm waiting for my chard and my courgette just to finish cooking off, I can grate my cheese ready to go in my quiche. So I need another chopping board. Cheese grater. I use the big holes on the grater. 150 grams of cheese. Just grate that block up. You can use any kind of cheese that you want. This is a mature cheddar cheese. It's got lots of flavour to it. I recently made a quiche with brie. That's lovely and creamy, but not quite such a strong flavour. If you've got any red Leicester or Edam or anything else in the fridge that needs using up, you can use a mixture of cheeses. That's a really good way of using your cheese up. Get all those last little bits off. There, so that's the cheese grated. Put your hands inside the grater, it's not sharp, so you can just get all the bits of cheese out. There. Okay. So that's our cheese grated. Last job to do, so we can pull everything together in a while when this is finished cooking, is to get our milk or our cream. So it's 300 mils in this jug. I'm using milk because I didn't have any cream, but the school recipe book suggests that you use double cream. So 300 mils of liquid and 2 eggs. So just tap the egg on the corner of the jug, edge of the jug. 1, 2, like that, and then with a fork just gently beat them together. You should see that the yolk starts to break and that they start merging together. Give it a good beat so that they're well mixed. Like that. And then we can actually season that mixture in the jug. So, tiny bit of salt, not much. We shouldn't have much salt in our diet. And some pepper. You can use as much pepper as you like. Mrs. Halloran likes a lot of pepper, so we'll put quite a lot in there. So there we are. Give it another gentle mix. Give my courgettes and my Swiss chard another stir. One over there. I've got one more thing to show you that I'm going to put in my quiche, and this goes to prove that you can use anything up in a quiche. So in the freezer I had some meatballs from IKEA, but they weren't meatballs, they were the veggie kind of meatballs, and they didn't go down very well with my family. So I'm going to hide them in the quiche, and then nobody will know that they're veggie ones, because all the other lovely flavours in the quiche will disguise it for me. So they've just roasted ready. So now all I've got to do is wait for my quiche base to blind bake. So that's going to be about another 10 minutes or so. So I'm going to keep my courgettes and my Swiss chard just on very low now, I think, so they don't burn. I'm just going to wait for my quiche base to cook, and then we'll put the whole thing together. Okay, so 15 minutes later, I've taken my quiche base out of the oven. I'm going to lift the baking beans out. So the baking parchment isn't hot, but the baking beans are very hot. So don't be tempted to touch those. Just put them somewhere where they can cool right down. I'll show you the bottom of the base here. You can see it's still slightly soggy, so I'm going to put it back in the oven now for another 5 minutes, and then it'll be ready to add our quiche mix to. Don't forget to set your timer so you don't burn it. Right, there's the timer, my oven, to tell me that my quiche base is ready. So you can see it's dried out now. It's ready to take the filling. So you can see that actually the pastry has shrunk down quite a lot, and really it's not quite big enough for the container. Don't worry if that happens, it's fine, as long as it's not going to spill, the filling's not going to spill right over the edge of the dish, it doesn't really matter. So now the fun bit. Here's the onions that we cooked first of all. So pop those in, just spread them over the bottom like that, and then I've got my Swiss chard and courgette mix. Scrape that in, spread that out, and my pepper mix. I think I've actually got a bit too much filling for the size of quiche, but this goes to show all the different things that you can actually put in your quiche. There, looking nice and colourful. So the next thing I'm going to put in are my veggie balls. So I'm going to place those in so that everybody gets some. I'm sure they'd like it much more in my family if they'd been meatballs, but they wouldn't have been any left in the freezer if they'd been meatballs. So we can use these up today like that. I'm going to put my milk and egg mixture in next. So just give it one final mix together and pour it all over. So if you're using double cream, your mix will be slightly thicker than mine is. I'm not going to need all of this. I think I'm going to stop there so it doesn't overflow too much. Now I chopped up a little bit of rosemary, fresh rosemary from my garden earlier, so I'm going to have a little bit of that in there, like that. Lovely homegrown flavours, and Mrs. Halloran always likes us to use mixed herbs, so sprinkle a few mixed herbs over there as well, keep Mrs. Halloran happy. There we are. So the last ingredient is the cheese that's going to melt on the top. So make sure you get that all over nice and evenly, and that's going to go lovely and golden and brown and slightly crunchy, so there'll be another texture on top of your quiche. Dip on the last little bit. There we are. Make sure everyone's going to get some cheese. Now I'm going to put that back in the oven. Remember, it's already been in the oven once, so it's very hot still, so don't pick it up with your bare hands, use your oven gloves. I'm going to put that in the oven at 180 degrees for about half an hour, and then we'll check and see if it's cooked. So, in a go. Don't forget to set your timer. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, there we go, and we'll check it in 30 minutes. So there's the timer going off after 30 minutes. Hopefully it's cooked just right. There, look at that, perfect, and it hasn't come over the edge even though the pastry shrunk back a bit. So there's my tea. We'll be having that with jacket potatoes and baked beans. I hope your quiches turn out really well, and we'd love to see some pictures of them. Bye.